Good morning, Tusculum, and all the other friends that may be sharing and watching these wisdom from James that I've been preparing and putting together for you. I hope you're having a great day. I want to begin with this question. Do you ever feel like you're just fighting against the world? Do you feel like this battle against sin is something that's never going to end and you're never going to be able to overcome it? Well, I can tell you this, you're not alone, and then also you can't do it alone. And this is really what James is talking about here in James chapter 4. We're not going to go all the way through this chapter, but we're going to get a good bit into it. James begins with this question, and it's like a series of rhetorical questions. And he says, why do you fight? Why do you argue? Why do you quarrel? Why do you make war with one another? Why do you murder with one another? And then in verse 3, he seems to indicate this is because we're going from our own passions. Because he says this, he says, you ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, you spend it on your own passions. And see, therein is the problem, is we chase after our own will. It means we're trying to do this on our own. We're trying to fight against these temptations, trying to fight against the world by doing this on our own. And really, when we think that we're fighting against the world, we're actually joining the world. Because if you notice here, James calls that, he says, you're an adulterous person if you do that. You're dividing your loyalty. You think you're following God, but you're not really. You're actually nuzzling up. You're getting closer to the world. And the closer that you get to the world, the more that you're going to act like the world. But then he says this, he says, when you're in that sort of relationship with this dual loyalty, you're not just an adulterer against God, but you're also hostile towards him. He says, therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend with the world makes himself an enemy to God. And then he quotes scripture, and at the end of this quoting this Old Testament, he says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And that's a beautiful passage right here, because he says that he's opposed to that, because that's hostile towards him. So he's opposed to that, but then notice what he says here. He says, but he gives grace to those who humble themselves. And humility is going to become very important in just a minute. And so he showers those with grace that are humble towards him. So to answer your question, how do we fight against the world? We can't do it on our own. In fact, we need a team, if you will, behind us. Well, really, we need one person behind us. We need God, we need the Son, we need the Spirit, we need fellow Christians around us. But what we really need to do is there's a series of actions here, and they revolve around these words: submission, resistance, drawing near, cleansing, purifying, and humbling ourselves. And so if you continue reading here, picking up in verse 7, this is our action plan for our fight against the world. And this is awesome, because each one of these actions that we do, there's a tremendous blessing that goes with it. And beginning in verse 7, it says this. It says, we need to submit ourselves to God. So begin. The first thing we need to do is make a commitment. Submit to God. Say, look, I'm not going to submit to the world anymore. No longer is it going to be my master. I'm going to submit to God and whatever his desire is. And then notice here, when you do that, when you live in submission to God, you're going to resist the devil. It says, so resist the devil. And here's the tremendous blessing. It says the devil will flee from you. Now, I like to put in my mind this imagery of Satan coming out to battle. And he sees who's behind us. He sees God. He sees the Spirit. He sees Jesus. And he sees all the fellow Christians behind us. And he's like, ooh, I don't want that fight. And runs away. So submit, resist. And then here's the next one. This is a cool one as well. As we draw near to God. And just like a magnet, when you get two magnets close together, they stick together. It says draw near to God. And what's he going to do? He's going to draw near to us. And so if you want to have that relationship with God, you begin with submission, resistance, drawing near. And then it begins this. It says, and cleanse your hands and your heart, O sinners. Purify your heart, you double-minded. And it says, be wretched and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to wisdom or mourning, and your joy be turned to gloom. So we need to then need to go through this cleansing, this purifying process. Now, here's a problem that I see so many times, and I'm even guilty of it myself, is we want to cleanse ourselves before we begin this process. And notice what it says here. It doesn't say cleanse yourself, then do these things. It says first submit to God. So when you live in submission to God, you're going to resist the devil, you're going to draw near to God, he's going to draw near to you, then you begin that cleansing process. You don't cleanse yourself and then do these things. That's what we try to do. But we can't cleanse ourselves if we're still resistant to God. We can't cleanse ourselves if we're if we're getting closer, if we're drawing near to Satan and not to God. So do these things in the right steps. And so cleanse ourselves. Well, how do we cleanse ourselves? Well, the first part of our relationship with God is we submit to him in baptism. But then what do we do each and every day is we know that we are transformed by the renewing of our minds. And so we're praying for forgiveness of the things that we do each and every day. And then the last thing that we need to do here in verse 10 is this. I want to tell you about this. We need to humble ourselves. Remember I read that Old Testament quote earlier where it says, God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Here he is here saying, humble yourselves before God and he will exalt you. Or another way of saying this is that he will lift you up. So this is our battle plan. This is our charge. If you feel like you're fighting against the world and you're not making any traction, I want you to know this. You can't do it on your own. You can't do it. You need some people in your corner. You need God, you need the Spirit, you need Jesus, you need your fellow Christians around you. But this is your plan. Submit to God. Resist the devil. Draw near to God. Purify and cleanse your heart and your hands. And then humble yourselves before God. And then he'll exalt and lift you up. It's a tremendous blessing for us today. I hope that you're encouraged by these wise words from James. God bless.